Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Higurashi. Last time we ended up with Tomoe reading the newspaper about the guy that jumped out the hospital window. Apparently Tomoe was the officer that conducted that investigation, which is really funny. So she handled the Rena baseball bat I think it was high school thing, which is interesting. I'm sure we'll dive into that now, since that's what the synopsis said about this arc, right? The main focal point. Also, we met Tomoe's ex-high school boyfriend, who, I don't know if he'll play a part. He did get a sprite, so maybe he will be important. They've been talking a lot about this political figure that he works for, showing hints at. I wonder how or if that at all will tie into the story. But yeah, let's just get into this. Sunday, October 10th, 1982. Isn't this further back? I don't know.
お疲れ様です。久しぶりね、カジ君。元気だった？はい、おかげさまで。
Huh. A young, familiar-looking officer standing guard by the entrance answered her in a booming voice as he saluted her. Kaiji, isn't he like a... I think this is a couple years back. Isn't this in 84? So 2 or 3 years back? 84, 85. Because Kaiji's a real officer. Or he doesn't seem fresh in the last arc. He had just graduated from police academy last spring and still retained his student-like innocence. Finding that innocence was heartwarming, Tomoe gave him a pat on the shoulder and said, "Do your best," before passing through the automatic door at the entrance. As soon as she stepped inside, the uniquely old-fashioned atmosphere tickled her nose. Tasting the familiar air of her old workplace after such a long time brought a smile to her face. Maybe not. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll literally just see if we continue reading. Of course, only 3 months had passed since she transferred to the National Police Agency, so it couldn't have changed that much. Tomoe returned to her senses after getting lost in her nostalgia. She walked over to the information desk and said, "Excuse me," to a female police receptionist. Unfortunately, it was a face she didn't recognize, so Tomoe pulled out her police badge to identify herself. Nope, she's at Tokihogushi, so it's probably the date. Maybe. Probably. Yeah, probably here, maybe as a cross for the hospital incident. The receptionist escorted her to one of the conference rooms where she waited for a few minutes. Just as she was about to put her hand on the tea served for her, she heard footsteps beyond the door. Once the door slid open, an old detective emerged. Jesus, the gun cock. What the fuck? I thought that said Hojo. It's Hanjo. Fake Hojo.
いえ、今日は公式のご用でお伺いしたわけじゃありませんので。皆さんには落ち着いてから日を改めてご挨拶させていただきます。あ、これつまらないものですが。
As she said that, Tomoe sat down in the seat across from the detective, with 2 bottles in hand, and presented them to the section chief Honjo. It was a first-class sake purchased in Kakuchi. Nice.
そんなに日も経っていませんし、顔を見せるのはちょっと恥ずかしくて。
ああ、そんだそんだ。ともえちゃんと最後の挨拶でワンワン泣いちまったんじゃったな。
Teehee.
いえ、決まり割りであん時ことは忘れてください。
She thought back to the farewell party and shook her red face while waving her hands around. After seeing that, Hanjo let out an even bitter gahaha laugh.
いやー、しかし新しい職場でも大活躍って噂じゃねえか。さすが推薦組のエリートに選ばれた逸材じゃ。一時でもおめえさんを持ってたことがオラの誇りだべ。
そんな、やめてくださいよ。本庄さんにいろいろ教わったことを忘れずに現場で応用しているだけなんですから。
謙遜せんでええって。ともえちゃんほど教え芸のある部がいなかった。何度失敗しておごられでもそのたんびに反省して努力して
Sounds about right.
他の若えやつらにも見習わせてよ。
ありがとうございます。でも頑張ってこれたのは本庄さんのおかげです。お世辞じゃなく本気でそう思っていますから。
That wasn't humility. After Tomoe was transferred from the youth department to the first investigation division, Hanjo became her boss in a new role as special investigator of unresolved cases. Hanjo was a veteran detective on the non-career path who climbed the ranks at the police station all the way from a patrol officer. He had a strong Ibaraki accent thanks to his local heritage, and he was intensely emotional, so Tomoe had many conflicts with him during their time together. But even so, after accompanying him during on-site investigations and hearing pieces of his stories at investigation meetings, she was shocked by the insight and analytical abilities he had gained during his experience. Sounds scary. After saying that, Hanjo would grab Tomoe out of the data room of the Special Investigation Office, where she was summarizing reports and reviewing evidence and investigation materials, and force her to visit the actual crime scenes. Even after the blood and corpses were removed, even after the marks and traces of chalk left by the forensics team had weathered and disappeared, even after the traces of the crime had faded, he'd spend hours looking over the crime scenes, always telling Tomoe to do the same.
見ないか。おめえさん、なんで刑事部で捜査一課に未解決事件を取り扱う部署の特別捜査係が置かれてっか。わかっか。
何か有力な証拠が見つかった時にすぐ捜査に入るためですか?
So was she part of unresolved cases? Is that like cold cases, or are they like newer than cold cases? Because it sounds like cold cases, but when she says this, maybe it's unresolved, but they're like not actually cold yet. They're still like, they're just on the back burner. Maybe. Hanjo went on to explain. When it comes to the crime scene, traces of the criminal are most visible immediately after the incident, but on the other hand, investigators often view the scene with a stereotypical prejudice. For example, if a bloody knife is found on the ground, they'll think it was the weapon. I mean, yeah. The wounds and traces left on the corpse can suggest the cause of death. As a result, the picture of the culprit can be determined from there, and the suspect can be arrested, charged, and prosecuted based on the information. In most cases, conventional investigators are able to capture the culprit that way. But sometimes that initial assessment is too hasty, and it's impossible to identify the culprit without recognizing the secret or trick behind it. After a certain length of time, those unresolved cases are abandoned by headquarters and handed off to a team of investigators known as continuation detectives. And the special investigators must perform another examination to determine if anything was missed in the original investigation materials. Okay, so it's not cold cases. It's just like they have their original investigation, and if there's still yeah, so and if they can't figure out it, they have like another wave, and probably if nothing else comes to light, they probably put it in the cold department. Maybe.
だからといっておめえ、未解決事件の処理ってのを残務整理がなんかと思ってねえか。
そんなことは。
She couldn't deny what he'd said. He'd hit her right where it hurt. An unresolved case is an incident where the veteran detectives and forensic investigators desperately scrutinized the case, yet they still couldn't identify the culprit. It was completely impossible for a rookie who knew nothing about investigation to reach a breakthrough simply by reviewing the case materials for a while. Deep down, Tomoe thought that, so she believed that investigating unresolved cases was little more than rearranging files.
資料をまとめただけなら捜査一課にはいらねえが、特捜係は欧米でいうところのプロファイラー、犯罪心理分析官の役どころだべ。
プロファイラーですか？
おめえを現場に連れてきた。そういうことじゃ。
Hanjo said that you can't feel the atmosphere of the incident without probing the crime scene. The bad juju. There will always be some trace of the culprit left at the crime scene if the crime is a murder, doubly so. For example, the criminal's footprints, even if they don't remain in so simple a form. Where did the culprit go before the crime? And how did he get away after the crime? The method. The route. By examining these items one by one, you can identify what psychological state the culprit was in and actually be able to see what he intended to do.
プロファイリング捜査ってのは日本じゃまだほとんど知られてねえ捜査技術だが、欧米じゃもう実践投入されて成果を上げてる。
Yep, I feel like profiling is well, I don't really know because I don't have any knowledge really about this sort of stuff, but profiling seems like a really good thing for that was like added into just the standard of criminal investigation. For the most part, obviously there's some iffy stuff, with racial profiling and stuff, but in general I think it's good for unresolved crimes, for like trickier stuff, making a profile of the culprit.
いずれこの先、捜査の主流になってくべ。
And Hanjo was right. True.
本庄さん。
犯罪はどんどん多様化して、その技術も上がってる。警察も新しい手法を取り入れるのは当然のことだ。オーラたちの役割は犯罪者をとっつかめること。そのためには何でも味方にでも武器にでもしろ。軽減とか知識とか、まして権威にこだわっていては刑事は務まんねえぞ。
Yes.
はい。
Older people tend to be more hard-headed, but Hanjo had spent time working on the front lines, so he of all people understood the urgency and impending danger. Tomoe generally wanted to learn from his eagerness and flexible insights. Additionally, Hanjo taught her to pay careful attention to the people related to the victim after the incident. Has anyone gained some benefit from the victim's death? Yes, that's also something to go for. Who gains from the death? Classic in solving detective novels. Is anyone exhibiting suspicious movements after the incident? In general, these behavioral patterns can't be seen immediately after the incident. Those ashamed of their dark secrets are aware that any misbehavior would give the police reason to suspect them. However, once police activity seems to slow down, or when they reach the limit of their patience, that's when these behaviors manifest. And since many of those actions can cast suspicion on them, you can often find clues with a little careful attention. Thus, by finding new ideas and clues as times move on, you can solve the incidents that on-site investigators had no choice but to abandon. That was the job of the special investigator.
数年前に教わったことですが、今でも昨日のことのように覚えています。
あんなことも言ったけんな。
Tomoe's eyes narrowed as she reminisced about old times as she gazed at Hanjo as he tried to hide his embarrassment by gulping down his coffee. Back then, she was a psychology major who had gained insight during her time working in the youth division. No, looking at it in hindsight, her confidence was motivated by her pride. So at first glance, the special investigation officer seemed to her like someone who managed materials on unresolved cases rather than a person actually handling real cases. But once she spent times on the front lines, she recognized it more as being conscious of knowledge and information. Hanjo could tell from Tomoe's regular behavior that she was sharp. He spoke to her with a serious expression on his face to cut off any pride from the root. True. If it was a perfect crime, they wouldn't be investigating it. That's what a perfect crime is. As explained by Keiichi. If the police are investigating, then it's not perfect.
だから特別捜査係を務める刑事は不経分析力と比例視野を持つ優秀な人材でなきゃいけないんだ。
Sounds like Tomoe.
資料集めの雑用係じゃねえ。
For someone as focused on improvement as Tomoe, a harsh reprimand like that was being splashed with cold water. But at the same time, it was a pivotal moment to reflect on her own pride and inability. Without those experiences as a special investigator, she would have become an uninspired detective, unable to challenge methods of investigation. After that, she memorized and analyzed an unthinkable amount of information related to past cases. As a result, Tomoe was able to achieve exceptional results. If not for that, she would have never been selected for the recommended group, and probably would have gone working at some prefectural police station somewhere.
だから、推薦組に選ばれたのは私の能力じゃない。自分の知らなかった技術や視点を教えてくれた本庄さんの下で働くことができたからなんだ。
As she pondered that, Tomoe once again realized how lucky she was. Come to think of it, that was also true of the youth department. Back then, Section Chief Kishimoto had already retired to the countryside, but he taught her how to connect with kids with various problems. He also thought about Tomoe's excessively straight-laced conduct and way of thinking, and gave her an earnest advice on how to rectify it. In that sense, she was blessed with the supportive superiors, even as far back as her time with the Ibaraki Prefectural Police Department.
そんなわけですから、これからも初心を忘れず頑張っていくつもりです。どうか今後ともご指導をよろしくお願いします。
わかったわかった、任せとけ。今度戻ってきた時はもっとこぎ使ってやっかんな。
Dude, I love the voice, man. It's the delinquent voice, like the old, or more Yakuza than delinquent, honestly. But he's a cop. Tomoe's business here should have just been a friendly greeting, but thanks to the incident she found about yesterday, She had serious business to attend to, the hospital thing. That was the reason she requested they taught in the meeting room rather than the open reception area.
で、お電話でお話しした件ですが。
ああ、そんだな。これがその資料だべ。
As he said that, Hanjo spread a document open on the opposite side of the table, with a serious expression completely lacking the earlier jovial atmosphere. There's a detailed report from the scene of the incident, and a photo of the scene was clipped to the side.
ひどい状態ですね。
8階の窓からの転落だったから。
Oof.
顔はぐちゃぐちゃになって
Face
誰
first.
かわかんね
That's unlucky.
え。親に身元を確認したんは。
Oh, well, I mean, he's dead,
してた
so.
パジャマと肩口のプロポ。
Wow.
とても顔は見せられんかった。
Tomoe glanced at the picture, then quickly flipped it over. It was painfully difficult to bear.
確かに、親御さんには見せられない。
Hopefully the girlfriend didn't see it. She was already on edge. She shook her head to chase off her harrowing thoughts, and took a deep breath to calm herself. She didn't even feel like confirming the mole that Hanjo pointed out. Even though she had very little conversation with the victim, Kohei Sawamura, she did recognize the face from an old case she worked on with Oishi. What the fuck? Oishi worked on that case? Huh? Since when? And that made the difference between her memories of him in life and his current state that much more painful.
発見時にはすでに被害者は死亡。
What? I'm trying to think back. I know Oishi had like some contact. Like maybe there's a time where he said he visited her at the hospital when she was talking about Oyasho-sama, but in my mind, I feel like he just got that from, like, he wasn't there himself. I have no idea.
おそらくは即死だろうな。被害者のいた病室には遺書らしきものは見当たらなかったけど、自殺と事故死、両面で当たってる。
殺人の可能性は？
Murder?
事件当時、病室は施錠されて密室だった。
It's true, so... Yeah, they said that the doors can be locked from the inside, but I think the general... I don't know if all nurses have a master key, but at least the head nurse of the area has a master key. And it was locked from the inside.
看護師数名の証言を聞いても、最後の検温から部屋に出入りした人間の姿はねえ。防犯カメラの記録映像にも不審者の姿はなし。で、自分から思い余って落ちたが、外を覗き込もうとかなんとかして足を滑らせたか。そのどっちかってのが所轄の見解だべ。
The official opinion is... So there's two options of what happened, and the official opinion is it's one of the two options.
ですか。
Tomoe also thought that reasoning sounded valid. There was no doubt that Kohei Sawamura was deeply mentally scarred after the earlier incident. Tomoe could assert to that herself. Therefore, even though there was a possibility the fall was an accident, it was far more likely that his mental instability drove him to jump. Plus, the testimony of the nurses and the fact that the tapes didn't reveal anyone suspicious were immutable evidence. However,
なんか腑に落ちない。
in fact, she was starting to feel suspicious because the conditions were a little too consistent. Bruh, imagine if he was actually murdered and not by Hanyu. Plus, thinking about it from the victim's point of view, there were clearly a few odd points. Alright, speak your truth.
ともえちゃん。
被害者が転落死したこの日って土曜日ですよね。なんでこの日だったんでしょう。
Okay, well, if it's an accident, it doesn't matter. If it was suicide, I mean, it could matter, but...
それは
I don't know.
私が少し前に別件で聞き込みをした時に教えてもらったんですが、毎週土曜日はこの被害者の少年の女の子
True.
たち
Oh
と
yeah,
いうより
that is actually a relevant
子供
point.
がお見舞いに訪れる日だったかと思います。
That is actually pretty relevant. Obviously, the girlfriend didn't do it because she got there. As soon as she got there, the guy was already dead. But Tomoe put out her police notebook and flipped through it. Tomoe could still remember the contents since it was so recent, so she was able to find the page easily.
やっぱりそうだ。それに実際、ほら、第一発見者に尾崎渚って女子生徒の名前があります。この子が被害者と前の学校で交際していた相手ですよ。
それで
これは私が
What?
女性だからなのかもしれませんが、
Okay, womanly knowledge about to be dropped?
自分の彼女が面会にやってくる日にその子と会わないまま飛び降りて死のうと考えるでしょう。
It is a little weird. And they made it seem that he does have Hinamizawa syndrome, so maybe he jumped because he had no choice. Because he was scared of Oyashiro, of Hanyu. Hanyu visiting him at night demanding cream puffs. I'd be terrified out of my mind too.
それが私にはどうしても腑に落ちません。
I just had the urge to Google realistic Hanyu. You think that will come up with the result? Realistic Hanyu Higurashi. Nope, you search that and it's just the goofy ass Hanyu we all know and love. Okay. Good. It's what I like to see. The thoughts that drive a person to suicide and escape from reality are often accompanied by a desire to share those final thoughts and intentions with someone other than yourself. And YouTube, I'm just reading text because I remember one time they sent me an email saying that I mentioned that they sent me like the suicide hotline and a message that they're there for me and shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? And they were, because they're word from a video, and then I clicked the link and it was just me reading Doki Doki Literature Club. Probably the scene where that girl kills herself, so. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to know YouTube cares. It's a good feature, but also don't send that, because if someone reads my email, they'll probably be like, what the fuck? For example, resentment, apology, despair. Thus, the method of flotation of death can, in many cases, reveal something about the victim's intentions. Among the methods of suicide, psychological studies consider jumping a very egocentric method. First of all, you can't even imagine how your body will be destroyed by the impact. There's a strange sense of elation and freedom that comes from showing that death to others. In other words, the emotional motivations include intense despair and twisted exhibitionism.
飛び降り自殺は
Sure. Probably a lot of internal feelings, because I'm sure a lot of people who jump from the roof. Like, she says this, and maybe there is some truth to that, but I'm sure a lot of it's more internalized. Like, people aren't actually rationalizing. Some probably do, but some probably just jump. Like, maybe internally wanting to do this, but it's not actually their, like, conscious decision. They're saying, like, suicide by jumping is, like, selfish and twisted and stuff like that is kind of cringe. But I get what she's saying. I just think, like, well, some people probably do that. Other people who do it, death by jumping, it's more internalized. They're not actually, like, trying to. They just have that sort of despair deep in them. Or that desire deep in them. And her logic is, can she really be feeling that while waiting for his girlfriend? I mean, in some ways, you would probably like get super nervous about the girlfriend coming if you are having these dark thoughts, but yeah, I see what she's saying. Tomoe simply couldn't convince herself of that.
おお、ちゃんと実践してんな。それが行動分析っちゅうもんだ。
Hanjo had a huge grin on his face, since he was thinking the same thing. Tomoe couldn't help but respond with a wry smile. In any event, this was her first time seeing the case files, so she came up with that thought immediately. Battle-hardened Hanjo realized that right away.
すると本庄さんもやはりそちらの見解ですか？
鑑識と所轄署の連中は七三の割合で自殺。
7 and 10.
俺はむしろ七三で殺人のよ。
Ooh. But it's not really a murder. I mean, it could be a murder, but worst case is death by Hanyu syndrome.
だからいずれ一家に取り上げる予定だったが、ともえちゃんの話を聞いててなお一層確信したな。
その根拠は何ですか？
これだ。
Oh, evidence. Hanjo pulled 2 photos out of his breast pocket as he said that, then handed them to Tomoe. The first picture was in a large photo of the window frame, taken at night. Scratch marks were left on the bottom and right side of the window frame, and the faint light of luminol reaction could be seen to the right. Okay, so luminol reaction is blood, and there's scratch marks on the bottom and right of the window frame. And the second picture showed the back of a left hand laying half opened on the asphalt, most likely belonging to the victim. The nail on the index finger was covered in blood and peeling off. Okay, we already know how this is, but I guess what he's saying is that the person was hanging from the window. And if you're hanging from the window desperately trying to grab on, then it's obviously not suicide. But as we can see here, this is probably the key for people who know the answers. I guess not just people, I guess, reading this in order. It's probably Hinamizawa syndrome. He probably was tearing out his neck, and because he smashed into the pavement, they couldn't really find that damage, so I still feel like it would probably be recognizable, but I guess I don't know. But this line really reads like it. The nail of the finger was covered in blood and peeling off is what happens when people try to scratch the throat out. They often describe it the same way. But I guess we'll see. It could actually be a red herring for us and be like, you think it was Hinamizawa syndrome? It was really some other guy.
沢村さんは私
Hiranuma.
の担当でしたので、記録はこれになります。
The older nurse named Hiranuma pulled out a file out of the bookshelf as she said that, then handed it to Tomoe. She seemed to have a meticulous personality and gave a polite but thorough description.
検温してから火災報知器の誤作動がありましたので、その対処に各部屋を
What
回っ
that?
てからこの詰め所に。
That's very convenient.
それからだいたい4時頃に彼の友達が面会に来られましたので、私が部屋までお連れしました。聞き込みを行った刑事からの話では、部屋に鍵がかかっていたと？ええ、普段は施錠しない患者さんだったので変だなと思いまして。
It was the girl's parents because they didn't want him. They thought he was holding their daughter back. Tomoe quickly skimmed through the file contents while flipping through the pages. It was almost identical to the reports summarized in the investigation materials.
病室を見せてもらえますか？ええ、どうぞ。こちらになります。ここから落ちたというわけですか？ええ。最初に発見したのはそのお友達でしたが、パニックになって暴れて、静止するのも一苦労でした。
She was most likely confused and unable to accept this as reality. It is far too burdensome a tale for an early adolescent.
で、発見してすぐに警察に通報。それからセンターの詰め所にいる主治医に連絡。その流れで間違いありませんね。ええ、その通りです。なるほど。
Tomoe nodded while scribbling Hiranuma's story into her notebook. Then she turned her attention toward the window frame in the photo.
この傷は被害者のものですよね。どうしてついたのでしょう。さあ、私には何とも。ひょっとしたら窓枠を掴んで外を見ていた時にバランスを崩して落下してしまったのかもしれません。それにしても、どうしてこの病室には鉄格子がないのですか。
That's what I asked initially. Like, I think when it happened, I'm like, yo, why isn't it locked or why aren't there bars? But it made sense because he's not like in a dangerous ward, right? He's just in a normal ass room. Normal ass rooms don't have bars in them, right? Maybe they do. I don't go to hospitals much. Now if he was like in a the psych ward of the hospital, or like an endangerment to themselves sort of hallway, it would probably be barred up, I imagine, but not like just normal rooms. Tomoe directly asked about the matter that was bothering her. The victim was being hospitalized on the top floor, so it wouldn't be surprising for this hospital to have them in consideration for the patient's safety. Not to mention the patients hospitalized in this particular ward were... Oh, is this actually the psych ward? Oh, well. Okay, let's hear her explanation about it, though. Out? Yeah, okay.
窓に転落防止の対策を施さないのはなぜですか。鉄格子だと監禁されたように患者が感じて治療に逆効果を与える場合が多いのです。
I can see that being true, honestly. It'd be pretty depressing having iron bars. They'd have to probably find a cleaner way of locking the windows. Oh, okay. So they are locked.
それが開いていた。どうしてです？すみません。私どもの見落としです。換気のために一度鍵を開けたのです。
Oh my god.
そのまま忘れてしまって。
Well, that just sucks. If it's true, unless Hiranuma's the killer.
弁解の余地もございません。
Yeah, literally. It's actually pretty bad. Next, Tomoe examined the calendar on the wall beside the bed. Cutesy, colorful characters were printed on it. It looked like it was designed for girls. She carefully pinched the pages to see the next page underneath. It was currently October, so there are 2 more pages. And finally, Tomoe approached the door, pushed the button on the knob, and closed it. Why is the door sound done, man? Done talking? It stresses me. It wasn't a normal door where you can turn a tab to lock the door. The lock apparently prevented the outer knob from rotating. So rather than locking before closing, the mechanism required the door to be closed before locking. Fair enough, so it wasn't like an accident. This is like the sussy part. That's very convenient. But to be honest, since I'm banking on it being Hinamizawa syndrome, I bet it actually is a coincidence.
確か3時頃だったと思います。鳴ってからしばらく各所を見て回ったので、3分ほど。わかりました。ありがとうございます。
Tomoe gave her a bow, then made her way out of the hospital. Oh. Investigation complete. The autumn sky was clear and a refreshing breeze blew by. Feeling a little sweat on her forehead, Tomoe pulled the handkerchief from her pocket and wiped it away. The cobblestones paved path glittered in the sunlight, scattering grains of light all about.
さすがにセミはもう鳴いてないか。
Yo, roll credits. The game is done. They stopped crying. Joke? They started crying? Nope. Still stopped. The autumn leaves fell down and flooded right before her eyes. The base of a distant mountain showed a mix of vermilion and yellow hues, and the leaves of the surrounding trees were just as vividly colored.
綺麗だろうな。こんな場所でなかったら。
Tomoe let out a sigh, then looked over the surrounding area. She was currently a short distance west of the city center in a dilapidated cemetery. Probably her parents' grave. Using the map given by the groundskeeper as a guide, she noticed another person near her destination. Moving closer to get a better look, it was a girl she recognized, Nagisa Ozaki. Hello. Before long, Nagisa noticed the approaching footsteps and turned toward Tomoe. Then she lightly bowed her head before turning her gaze back toward the gravestone in front of her.
ご無沙汰してます。
Okay, so this is not our parents' grave, it's dead guys.
お参りしてもいいかしら。
Nagisa gave no answer to that and simply shuffled her feet so she wasn't standing directly in front of the gravestone. Tomoe took this as an affirmation and said thank you, then sat the flowers she bought from the local flower shop down next to the grave. Not gonna try. Can't get me today. There was already a beautifully blooming cosmos flower sitting there, most likely placed there by Nagisa herself. She lit a bundle of incense sticks at the nearby brazier, and then sat them down in the indentation of the incense burner.
こんな形でもう一度会いに来たくなかったわ。おためごかしな言い方に聞こえるかもしれないけど、私は早く元気になって元の通りになってほしかった。彼にも、それにあなたにも。
Tomoe could hear a heavy breath, even though her back was turned. Honestly, there are several things she wanted to ask Nagisa about regarding this case. However, Tomoe recognized how much the girl's heart must ache, so she repressed the urge. The person most hurt by this incident was none other than Nagisa, and maybe his parents, or whatever, his family. Tomoe wasn't so callous as to force that on her just because of the opportunity.
ごめんね、お邪魔して。それじゃ、元気でね。
After saying only that, Tomoe turned away from Nagisa.
ここに納骨したの。ついす。
That moment, Tomoe looked back as soon as she heard Nagisa muttering. Nagisa clenched her blouse near her chest and furrowed her eyebrows to endure the emotions welling up inside of her.
1階に降りた時には白い布をかぶせられてて、病院の人たちに遮られて近づけなくて。
Love that part.
その後すぐに警察の人が運び出して、戻ってきた時には骨になって。結局私、浩平くんの顔、最後まで見せてもらえませんでした。
Tomoe thought that outcome was for the best. Nothing good would come of showing such a drastically warped human form to a child. In fact, Madoka was so scared by seeing her parents scarred by seeing her parents' burned bodies that she was still suffering from it even now.
だからかな。私、まだ信じられないんです。浩平くん、本当に死んじゃったのかなって。本当は みんなが後で私をからかおうと嘘ついてるだけじゃない
Haha, got you good, Nagisa.
尾崎さん。浩平くん、入院してすぐの頃は病室から逃げ出したことがあるんです。入り口のドアに鍵がかかっているから窓ガラスを割ってパジャマ姿で怖い夢にうなされたとひどく怯えていました。
It had probably happened a little while after Tomoe had gone in to question him. At that time, she was heading to the hospital room in the back of the first floor and to meet him, but his parents refused to cooperate, so she was about to leave, and that was when she met Nagisa. And when the parents weren't there, she was able to meet him face to face once with Nagisa's consent. Of course, she was only able to make small talk, but his pale, worn-out appearance was plain to see during their short time together.
でも先々週に病室が1階から8階に移ってすごく喜んでました。ここは景色もいいし病状が軽くなった人が入るフロアだって看護師さんに教えてもらったって。
Well, that clearly doesn't seem like he wanted to commit suicide.
それに
Just from that.
次の週の診断で退院の日がわかるって言ってたんです。だからあの日そのことが聞けると思って私早く退院して一緒の大学に行こうって約束してくれて、浩平くんは頭いいから私浩平くんの行きたいところに合わせられるように成績上げようと頑張ってたのに。
Nagisa's voice trembled while huge tears spilled from her eyes. The drops came overflowing down her cheeks, one after another, and no matter how much she wiped them away with the back of her hands, they wouldn't stop. While still sobbing, she looked up and turned toward Tomoe, and then... Oh.
だっておかしいじゃないですか。みんなの言う通り浩平くんは時々変な夢を見てうなされることもありました。だけど私との約束を忘れて飛び降りて死にたくなるほど悩んでいたなんてとても考えられない。
Seeing that desperately sorrowful color of her eyes painfully squeezed at Tomoe's chest. Rena gives, Rena taketh.
それなのにそんな優しい子がどうして彼を傷つけようなんて考えたのかしら。
Not so cute anymore.
そんなこと知らない。知るわけない。落ち着いて尾崎さん。浩平君を殺した犯人を捕まえるためには大事なことなの。
Oh.
よく考えてみて。
Really announcing it's a murder, huh? Tomoe lowered her face to Nagisa's height to look her in the eyes and gave her a gentle look to calm her down. Wow, this is you shouldn't be making these promises, because I really feel like it's the Hinamizawa syndrome, so she's not gonna find a culprit. Looking at that expression, Nagisa relaxed a little of the anger and frustration welling up inside her. She took a moment idly to think, then muttered quietly.
何？浩平くんが殺されたって思ってくれるんですか？ええ、それ以外考えられない。
Well,
彼は誰かに殺されたんだと思う。
how? After hearing that, Nagisa began spilling huge tears once again. However, they had a slightly different tone than the angry, sorrowful tears from a moment ago.
誰も信じてくれなかったんです。浩平くんが自分から死ぬわけない。まして事故なんて。なのにみんな密室だったから事故だ、自殺だって勝手に決めつけて。
just because of the closed room. Surely, we're getting close to Minako.
犯人を探してくださいって頼んでも誰も。大丈夫よ。少なくとも私はこれは事件だって思っているから。本当に？ええ。今聞いた限りだと、沢村くん、亡くなる前の週に今週の診断次第で退院できるかもって話していたのよね。
Nagisa deeply nodded. What Nagisa had said right there completely stripped away the uneasy sensation Tomoe was feeling. Yep, it's clear he was not, at least from appearances, he did not seem like he was going to commit suicide.
部屋のカレンダーを見たら次の月に退院予定日が書いてあった。多分あなたが来るときにその話をするつもりだったんだと思う。
I mean, this shift was pretty sudden, and he's not from Higurashi, but he could get the syndrome from Ren. I don't know, it's weird. What if he was really murdered, but I guess we would have no idea why or by who. And it really does feel like it's probably the syndrome, so I don't know. It's definitely unnatural dying from Higurashi syndrome.
事故って可能性ももちろんない。そもそも窓から転落するような行動をする理由がないし、最後に会った看護師も検温時に異常を認めていない。間違いなく。
Alright.
殺人事件よ。
Surely. Then Tomoe stood up straight and glanced at her watch. She started a little more time before the express train arrived.
あなたには辛いことかもしれないけど、真実を突き止めるために協力してほしいの。この後、時間少しだけいい？約束する。必ず犯人を捕まえてみせるから。ね。
Oh, chapter bait. Perfect. I swear this arc went like without a real chapter bait for like literal hours, and now it's getting back into fashion. We'll take it. Anyways, guys, we are gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for watching as always. The mystery continues. We got a little Tomoe lore. Always love to see it. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time with some more Higurashi. See you.